guys, I got good stuff too. I'm not a national selling author yet.
Yet.
Yet. Well, I'll use that to segue because I want to make sure we make the most use of our time, and I'm sure more people will be popping on. But last week we talked about how we are almost 2/3 of the way through the year. We're even closer to that now. End of August means we just have 4 months left in the year. Can you believe it? Wasn't it just February and we thought, oh my God, 2020 is my year, and then like all this crazy stuff happened. Could still be your year. It really could. It's definitely going to be my best year as far as business goes. So it's a great time to reboot, refocus, make a plan, set some new goals, or just remember what the heck your goals were. And we talked a little bit about that last week, putting those big rocks first. So if you picture like a jar that you want to fill with big rocks, pebbles, and sand, if you start with the sand, you will not have room for the big rocks and the pebbles. They just won't all fit. But you will be amazed if you actually physically do this. You put big rocks in first, so your most important things, the really thoughtful, intentional things you need to do to get to your goals. If you put those in first, if you schedule those first, if you prioritize those things first, and then you put in your pebbles, and then you pour the sand around it, all that extra minutia stuff, there's room for everything. And the most important things get done first. So that prioritizing is really huge. So if you took the time to brainstorm some goals for the rest of the year, or put together some things that you want to accomplish for the rest of the year, that is great. I would love to talk more about that. Is there anybody who kind of started working on those things or got some goals in place or made any progress with that for the rest of the year? Just like putting it together.
I've thought about it and trying to make them motivating yet realistic.
Yes. And that's a really tricky thing, right? Like anytime I sit down to write goals, I find it to be a little bit overwhelming. Is anybody else in that camp?
Yeah, like in the meeting this morning, they're saying like, be the dreamer and, aim high and all that kind of stuff. Because if you aim high, you'll probably miss, but it's better than not aiming at all. And then, and then I've been kind of going through the one thing and it's like, well, have a big goal, but find the smallest domino. So it's like, identifying the high goal, but then paring it back to the small, and then setting that goal. So it's kind of a struggle.
It's a lot. And there's a lot of jargon within Keller Williams, but it's really useful stuff. So like Bethany was talking about The One Thing, that's a book that Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote. There is an excellent podcast that's The One Thing. So it's those guys have put together, along with Jeff Woods, a podcast. They also have a coaching and training company that's associated with that, but the podcasts are free and there's some really great content in there. Jeff's a little dramatic, so just be ready to listen to somebody who like talks very dramatically, but he has great content. There's a few different episodes in there of how billionaires set goals, and I highly recommend that you listen to those. They're 2-part series, and they're actually from live presentations they did at Keller Williams family reunions. They're really insightful. I re-listened to some of those this morning. And there are some other bits in there about how they use the systems that they have that kind of come from, they stem from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So those are great resources to go back to when you're trying to figure out your goal setting. I find the books alone to be a little much. Like I just don't know where to start. And I've really had a hard time transitioning to this style of putting goals together. But the overall theme of it is think about those big, massive, think big life. What's something amazing, a vision for the future? Think of that as like a down the line, something enormous. So not just how many homes will I sell this year? How many happy clients will I help? how much will I make in commission, but think something really big. Like if I look back 5 years, Charlie asked me to do this once and I burst into tears. Look back 5 years to when I started in real estate. Well, I started in real estate about 6 years ago, but when I was early on in real estate, and where my life was at that point and where my income was and how many people I'd worked with and my community of past clients and where I saw my business going versus now, it is completely different. There is so much that I don't know if I really could have envisioned happening, but I put those things on my someday vision. We just moved into our forever condo and I never thought we could have a place like that. Like just crazy stuff that you think, this is really pretty major, kind of sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to put it on paper. Do it, because that's the only way it's going to happen. And if you do something huge like that, then work backwards to today. So like Bethany said, you're kind of like breaking it down to that one small thing. Think of it as your vision being like the big overarching, this is what's coming up, and pick like a few important areas of your life that really matter, where you're focusing those goals, because it can get overwhelming otherwise. And then strategize and find those priorities and then strategize back to today. So what can I do today to make progress on this goal? The thing they say in the one thing all the time is, what is the one thing I can do that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing that I could do right now today that would make everything else easier or unnecessary when it comes to achieving that goal? If you've got a big vision, pull some things from that to make goals. So if your big vision is to become a millionaire, to have $1 million in net worth, how the heck are you going to get there? Well, you've got to start making more money, right? So what kind of goals can you set for yourself? Okay, by my 5th year in real estate, I want to be making this kind of GCI. By my 2nd year in real estate, I should be making this kind of GCI. Okay, so how does that translate to today? How can I get there? How many people do I have to work with? What kind of income do I need to start with to build that out? So thinking ahead, okay, here's the big vision. Here's some major goals I can pull from that. 5-year, 3-year, 2-year, 1 year. Okay, how do I break that down to today? And that is, for me, that's a way easier way to go about it. If I go kind of bananas with my big vision and then I rein it in a little bit and I get more specific and then I get really specific as I get closer to now. So that section of the rest of this year is more, it's more doable, right? It's more approachable. It's something you can digest and make headway towards without being like, well, I didn't make $1 million this year, like that's no good for anybody. So break it down into something more doable, and having something really major that you're working towards sometimes can be super motivating. If you reach that point where you've hit a dead end with something or somebody and it's like, let me get a bird's eye view here. What is my real vision? What am I really aiming towards? Am I getting caught up in the minutia? Am I grabbing that like low-hanging fruit? And is that really getting me to these bigger goals? Because all those steps you make really do. And it's, like Bethany said from this morning, from Carrie Oberbrunner, in that discussion, it's more about the progress and less about achieving the goal. But you've got to have a really compelling goal to push you to make that progress and to motivate you to honestly just take that first little step. So I think that's definitely one way you can look at it. If you've spent a little time kind of thinking about this since last week, or if you're just starting out, you've got a little time, but make it a priority this week to really think, what's my big vision and how can I pull like a few major rocks out of that from some different parts of my life, my business, my relationships, my health, whatever it is, and give yourself like a 5-year, a 3-year, a 1-year goal, 1 year from today, and then pull some pieces from that to the rest of 2020. And I think that'll make it more digestible. in the one thing, what one of the tenets of the one thing, or one of the practices that they have in there, is something called the GPS, and it stands for goals, priorities, and strategies. So the GPS is goals, priorities, strategies. So if you're looking at your big vision, you're pulling out some goals for 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, the rest of this year, then the thing you want to think about is, okay, based on this goal, I want to close transactions for 20 more happy clients by the end of this year. I want to close transactions for, how many months do we have yet left? Okay, so if I wrote an offer today, it could close probably by the end of September, beginning of October. So I've got October, November, December for closings. Okay, I'm going to aim for 3 closings a month. That's a stretch. That's less than comfortable. Find something like that. Okay, what's realistic? I could probably close 2 a month, maybe 1 a month. Okay, double it. Make it compelling. Make it exciting. Give yourself some momentum. Because what if you get those 3 and then you're like, well, I'm just going to twiddle my thumbs till the end of the year. Cool. Then starting January, you're going to have 0 momentum and you're going to have to start all over again. So do something that's going to keep you going, give you that momentum. Momentum is key in this business. It's so important. In any business, really. You've got to have some energy going into whatever comes next. And making progress on those goals gives you that energy, gives you momentum. And then you can celebrate little victories. Like, I went to an open house, I met 3 new people I had not met before. Only one of them didn't have an agent, but I'm communicating with them, reaching out to them. This is a new contact, and it's important. I've broken down my goals in order to close 6 more transactions before the year is out. In order to close 9 more, 10 more transactions before the year is out, I need to meet more people. I need to have more people in my pipeline of potential business, and meeting 1 more person is a victory worth celebrating. And now I need to, do my due diligence to be intentional and purposeful with my time, and remember to communicate with that person, send them listings in MLS, follow up, try not to be too pushy, kind of read them, take that time to build that relationship, because maybe they don't buy from you this year, but maybe come spring they will. And that'll work towards your goals, your bigger goals. So it's not just about the end of this year and then that's it. Well, if they're not going to buy with me by the end of the year, forget it. It's more than that. You have to think bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to set goals, but let them be fluid too. Because, sometimes if you're too strict with your goals, you're like, oh, that open house client that seemed like they were going to buy, something changed in their life, and now they've ruined my plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they were supposed to be my one for this month or whatever. So it's like, sometimes you can see it as a scoreboard, and I do that. So it's hard to not see it as a scoreboard. It's like, it was a step in the right direction toward the goal. The timeline changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's why having that bigger vision is important, because if you're like, well, it's not going to work for this current goal, but my bigger vision is to build those really strong relationships to have continued business. It's not just about selling to this one person. It's about building that relationship and keeping in touch with them. And maybe they send you somebody else. Maybe they buy with you later. But by the time they do, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who I have been in touch with for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then other people just fall from the sky and write an offer within 2 weeks and we're off and running. It really varies. So you can't put all your, you can't watch all the eggs in the nest that are right there in front of you and expect them all to hatch right now, right? Like you have to be really purposeful and intentional with how you're using your time daily and weekly and monthly, because all those activities will add up. And if you're only doing the one activity, focusing on one person, if that doesn't pan out, it's devastating because it's all you have going right now. So it's important to not to have your fingers in too many things, but to just be really intentional. I've got these 3 goals. I know that I need to make as many contacts as possible. So I'm going to do that in a few different ways. Mondays, I'm going to follow up with everybody from open houses. Tuesdays, I'm going to be on social media, connecting with anybody that I can, looking for people who are asking for real estate information. Well, however I can connect with people on social media, that's my Tuesday activity for an hour. Wednesdays, I'm sending out handwritten notes to people in my sphere to tell them I think they're great. I happen to put it on a card that I had made that has my real estate information on the back of it. But I'm not going to make it about real estate. I'm just going to be checking in and telling them how they're wonderful and why I appreciate them. Thursday, you see what I mean? Like you're going to do some really intentional things with the purpose of making headway towards that bigger goal, but knowing that in order to like track your progress, it's good to have something a little shorter term. So, you know, what do I have right now? Who do I have active as my current clients, listings, buyers, people that are wanting to work with me, have scheduled appointments, or are in progress? How many people do I have under contract right now? Okay, what's my goal for the end of the year? How am I making progress towards that number? And like Bethany said, if you get to a point, you know, check in weekly and see where you stand with your progress. It can be very motivating or it can be very clarifying. There are times when I'm like, God, this week was terrible. I am over it. I don't even want to think about goals. This week sucked. And then I look at where I stand and I'm like, wait a minute, let's get some clarity. What am I trying to accomplish here? What was my goal for the week, the month, the quarter? How have I made progress towards those things? Oh, yeah, that's not so bad. I actually have to rely on my assistant Liz to help me do this. So every week we have a meeting on Monday morning and we walk through what worked, what didn't work, victories, and progress towards our goals. And there are, especially lately, because I am freaking tired, there are weeks when I'm like, I don't know, I don't think anything good happened. I'm like done. And she's like, wait, didn't this happen? Didn't this close? Didn't this person write an offer? Didn't you actually finally get this person to go look at a property? Those are victories. And I'm like, oh yeah. So if you have a hard time seeing that progress, find a buddy in launch or find somebody on your team, if you're on a team, that you can check in with once a week or every other week, and just have that accountability, not only to keep you on track and on task, but also to remind you of your progress and to help you celebrate those victories. Because like I said, it's all about momentum. And there's nothing more momentum killing than feeling like crap about your week, right? Like if you feel like you didn't accomplish anything, you feel like you had nothing to celebrate, that's an automatic hit the brakes. So having somebody to help you see that you are making progress gives you that energy, gives you that momentum to keep moving forward. And that's what it's about. The goals are to keep you moving forward. Now, if you get to a week of review, or you're doing a monthly check-in about how things went with your goals, and you're like, oh shoot, we're really killing it. I'm going to pass this goal, or I'm getting really close and I'm kind of losing steam because I know I could just like kick back for a month. Like for me, by the end of August, I'll have closed as many transactions as I did all of last year. And it's very tempting to just be like, see you in 2021, I'm out. I'm tired. But there are other things. I have a bigger vision. So the rest of this year, I'll have business, sure. I have a good flow of people coming through my pipeline, but my bigger focus, my bigger goal for next year is a quality of life goal. It's why I'm so tired right now. I need another agent. So my focus for the rest of this year is to build my team and add an agent. And I'm going to use the career visioning path that's set up through Keller Williams. So I'm refocusing. I've done a great job of getting to our goals for the year. I know that with what we have in the hopper, we're going to pass that 60 transactions for the year, and I'm not worried about it. I'm going to continue to communicate with people, connect, make those things happen. But my focus, my intention, and the way I'm going to set my big rocks for the week is going to focus on getting that set up. So I'm going to make sure that I know the career visioning path. I'm going to make sure that I'm reaching out to people and, starting the interview process, building out our training program, making sure that Liz is on the same page with me. So that's becoming my focus. And I've had to adjust that. That was not part of the plan for 2020. And by the time we got to August, I was like, I have to change something. I'm going to burn out. I can't keep doing this. So you can make those changes, and it may be a different section of your life or a different boulder that you didn't think about so much, or kind of got ignored or pushed aside for those other goals. But when you're looking at your big vision, like part of my big vision is to actually have, this is sad, but to have a full one day a week where I don't work. That's a big goal for me. It sounds ridiculous, but it is. So I'm reprioritizing, I'm refocusing on that vision of being able to have time off to be fully present with my family, with my friends, away from work. And the way to get there is to break it down to, okay, what do I need? I need help. I need leverage. I need people. And how am I going to get there? I've got to strategize that and then make that a priority. So you may find that your goals shift, and maybe not just your numbers, like, oh, I'm getting close to this goal, I better bump it up a little bit, or I'm feeling really discouraged, maybe I scoot it down a little bit to help me feel like I'm getting closer to it, or I have to change my strategies. It could be my numbers goal is fine, but I need to shift my focus and be more intentional and purposeful with how I'm using my time at home, or how I'm setting up my workspace and my time use every day. I need to really focus on getting 8 hours of sleep, or I'm going to lose it. Whatever it is, break those things down and remember your big vision. If you feel like you're lost, go back to that big vision and then kind of build it backwards again. And you very likely, like Bethany said, you're very likely going to make some adjustments as you go, and that's okay. Goals should be living, breathing things that you are always feeding, are pulling from, are reconsidering. You should be thinking about them every day. Put them on paper, put them somewhere where you can see them, stick it on a Post-it note on your mirror in the bathroom, make a vision board and put it somewhere where you see it every day. This is not something you should put in your secret diary and then like close up until the end of the quarter or the end of the year when you're like, let's see what happened. Like that, obviously you're not going to get anywhere with that if you don't even remember what your goals were. So it's really important that you're checking in on those regularly, not to beat yourself up, but to make sure you're making progress, to give yourself that boost of energy, something to celebrate, get that momentum going. That's really, really important when it comes to actually making progress, and you will be amazed by how much you can accomplish. I didn't really start tracking my business until my second year. My first year was kind of like, I don't know what's normal. I'm just going to go. And that worked out pretty well, but I had no freaking idea. And I did not have nearly the resources you guys do to help me get there. The one thing I did have was a manager in my office who I could go to for accountability. And so I made that a priority every week, that I had to check in with her and tell her where I was with my progress. And as soon as I started setting really specific goals, that happened quickly. It was pretty cool and kind of astonishing. And I think a lot of people in the office who'd been doing this for years were like, what the heck is she doing? Because like, I know a lot of people, but I didn't like grow up in real estate. I don't have connections to luxury people. Like there are things that just I just had to figure out how to make it happen. And so whatever situation you're in, the key is, like Carrie said this morning, not to have a victim mentality, not to have the mentality that things are happening to you and, well, that's why I can't do that because I'm not like that person. And comparison is the thief of joy. Don't do it. It's important to know what's realistic or what you can accomplish, but don't compare how you're doing to other people. It's not going to be helpful. But just think about what you can do to be in charge of what happens to you. You happen to the world, is what Carrie said this morning. So What are you going to do? What are your actions going to be? How are you going to use your time to make this happen? Because it really doesn't matter whether you're from here or not, whether you were born into a real estate family or not, whether your friend brought you on their team, whether you're an independent agent who just started. It doesn't matter. If you know what you want, if you break down those steps to get there, if you have a big vision and you can pull out some really, some stretch goals that are attainable, and then you track it, you pay attention to it, you check in, you'll get there. It's ridiculously simple, and not always easy, but it really does work. I mean, I'm living proof of that. I've set insane goals and they just keep happening. And it's every year, it just blows my mind. August, I will have sold over $4 million in real estate in 1 month. That's an insane thing to happen. I never thought that would happen, but it did, because I set these crazy goals and I'm intentionally and purposefully using my time and breaking things down backwards. Now I have to adjust my big vision. We're living in our forever condo. That's off the list. I got to put something else on there because I need something else to motivate me to keep me going. My biggest why is donating to the community, is making a difference in Milwaukee monetarily and with my time. Well, breaking that down, I need to have more time available to do that, but I also need to increase my income. How can I do that? I'm going to get somebody else on my team, because what's most important is those things. So it's important to keep going back to that, but it really is worth taking the time to sit down and think about this stuff uninterrupted. Put your phone on silent, put it away, don't even look at it, get out some paper and some fun pens if that helps. Play some like Baroque music that really helps me think, and just really focus for an hour and a half, and brainstorm what your big vision is, and then pull some stuff out of there. Get out a highlighter. Okay, ooh, this would be good, this would be good. Okay, are all my goals in the same part of my life, or am I kind of finding some variety to keep balance or counterbalance? Okay, good. How do I break that down further? And if you get to that part and you're like, I don't know where to go from here, schedule an accountability call with me. That's what I'm here for. Or call your buddy, have a partner within Launch or someone on your team and say, okay, I've got this so far. This is where I'm hitting a roadblock. How do I break this down further? Is there a resource within the company for that? There's a calculator that you can use to say, I want this to be my GCI. How do I work backwards from there? How many contacts do I have to make a day? How many, transactions do I have to have in the year? You can break it down backwards. So there's resources there. You're not alone, but you do have to, make the effort to take the time to really thoughtfully and intentionally put those things together, and then reach out for the resources that you need. I saw a question pop up in the chat. Can you share links to the One Thing? So the One Thing, it's not video. Well, they have some videos on their website, and it's the number one thing. But the podcast is through, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's just called The One Thing.
Podcast is great. I listen to
awesome.
it all the time, driving around.
Good. That's the thing. It's a great thing to listen to when you're in the car. Anytime I feel like I'm losing momentum, or I feel a little bit lost and I need to refocus, I find something on either the One Thing podcast, the Brian Buffini podcast. Brian Buffini is another real estate coach, not associated with Keller Williams, but he's great. I also like the Focus on This podcast. It's a branch of Michael Hyatt and Company. They make the Full Focus Planner, which is what I use. But Focus on This podcast can be helpful if you're like trying to figure out time management. There's also Empire Building, which is with 4 awesome women who lead very big businesses within Keller Williams. Empire Building.
They were just on the last podcast, I think.
Yeah, it can get a little overwhelming to listen to them, I'm going to be honest, because they are building such big businesses, and they try to kind of scale it down to a smaller, starting out phase and how you can implement that stuff. That one I find I only listen to when I'm looking for like big vision guidance. And also Gary Keller's story is a great way to get some inspiration for big vision. And that's Think Like a CEO. And that's where Jay Papasan interviews Gary, basically to hear his story of how he built Keller Williams and his thoughts behind it. And that's an interesting way to get some insight on how he thinks, how somebody who has huge goals and has accomplished huge goals has put that together and has lived their life that way. So that can be informative if you're looking for something not so instructional, but more like an example.
Yeah, motivational.
Yeah. So if you're having a hard time kind of coming up with that stuff, usually when it's time for me to set up my block schedule, to set my goals for the week, to, think about next year, if I'm feeling a little overwhelmed or I need some inspiration, I'll go to one of those podcasts. And that's the best way for me to get some motivation to really work on this stuff. But give yourself thinking time to really, truly focus only on this. Carrie said today, you can't do two cognitive things at once. Right. Trying to focus on this. This is a really important piece of your business and your life, for that matter, because we're all about counterbalance here.
I think one of the challenging things for the newer agents, especially this year, because all it's been is a year of adjustment and transition. So it's been really hard action, and then all of a sudden something hits you sideways, and and then you have some of the agents who have been around a while and their business is going crazy and they're so busy, and you're like, I have one deal or I have no deals. It's like, what's wrong with me? So it's like you said, don't compare, because that's going to take the wind out of your sails. So you have to find another way to vision your accomplishments and your triumphs. Like, well, I did do an open house and I did meet someone there and I'm talking to them. Maybe I don't have an appointment. Maybe I don't have a contract. Maybe, we haven't even seen a house together yet, but at least I met someone and they seem to like me.
Yeah. Well, and when you're new, it's not just about what business you have going on. It's about what you're getting out of what you have going on. It's about what you're getting out of it. So are you learning something new? Are you becoming more of an expert? Are you figuring out a better way to serve people? This is the time to do that stuff, because when you do get crazy busy, it's a lot harder to step back and be like, what can I take from this? How can I learn to do things differently? And you're right. I'll say two things to that. Do not compare your month 1 to my year 7. It makes no sense, right? Like, I've had a ton of time and I don't have kids, work all the time, like, I don't necessarily have a healthy work-life counterbalance either. So don't compare what you're trying to do if you have like a family and you're in your first few months of real estate and you didn't come from here in the first place, like, there's no comparison. It's like when I try to compare myself to somebody who, like, their mom was a real estate agent and so they joined their team and they grew up on the North Shore and so they sell all these houses in Whitefish Bay. Like, that's a really silly thing for me to compare to, because I didn't grow up over here. It doesn't make sense for me to expect myself to have the same kind of business that they do. And ultimately, it doesn't matter, because my goals are probably different than their goals, right? Like, I'm trying to reach my full potential. My goals are, intentional for me. They're what's important to me. My big why is why I'm doing this. The distraction of comparing just takes the wind out of my sails. It hurts my momentum. It gets me off course. It makes me forget what my big why is. It makes me forget what my goals are and my big vision. And then, like, what's the point? Because at the end of the day, who cares who's on that top 10 list in our meetings? Because you don't know what those people are going through. Like, for some people on that list, they are really disappointed in themselves because they haven't accomplished their goal for the year. For some people on that list, they're like, great, I'm killing it, except for I have 0 work-life balance and I'm fried. Like, there's other parts of that story that you don't see when you see people's numbers. And that's why it's way more important to focus on your goals, your big vision, and what you're doing to make progress towards that. Because, it's that have you heard the hockey stick growth chart? When we had Charlie's brother-in-law here from Uber, he was talking about that. So what it means is you're moving along, making feeling like, okay, I'm like making baby steps towards things. And then all of a sudden you have this growth. And that's because you've been making all this itty bitty progress along the way. Another chart that you'll probably have seen before is that you like make progress and then you kind of plateau and like figure stuff out, and then you make progress and then you kind of plateau and figure stuff out. And it's like these itty bitty steps, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're off and running. That's just how it happens most of the time. So, and even if you have this like killer jump, you have to maintain that because it'll drop too. I mean, fourth quarter last year for me was terrible. It was terrible. I was living off a credit card. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Well, it's because I completely lost sight of what I was supposed to be doing. I burned out. I stopped doing my activities. I wasn't prioritizing my time. It happened like that. And I was like, that's not going to happen again this year. So I've gotten even more intentional about my big vision, about breaking down my goals based on that, about trying to find goals that make sense in different parts of my life and not just my business, and checking in on those things regularly, because it is easy to lose sight. And the business, you know, the market can shift. And if you've been doing those activities, if you've been focused on what's important, if you've been intentional and purposeful with your time, then that's why the people who are crazy busy right now are crazy busy. And there are other agents who have nothing going on who have been in the business for a while. If you're new, that's a different story. But it's because we've been trudging along. You know, as soon as COVID hit, I was calling people, sending notes, sending things in the mail, reaching out to my community, reaching out to my contacts, doing everything I could to give, so that, you know, first of all, because that's what I'm all about. That's my why. So it was fulfilling, gave me momentum and energy, something positive to focus on. But also it's coming back around in terms of business. It's ridiculous. They just keep popping up. But I know it's not for nothing. Like, oh, it's just me being me. People just popping up just because I'm here. Like, no, it's because I'm doing intentional things every freaking week with the purpose of getting more business, making more connections with people, building great relationships, so that I have the funds to contribute back to the community, so that I have the time to, you know, work for the causes that I care about. It all comes back to my big why and my big vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think too, it's like, you know, you've kind of figured how you can genuinely do that kind of stuff, you know, and when you're new, it's like, you know, well, am I the postcard person, or am I the person that goes to fundraisers and I'm just a face-to-face handshake person? Or, you know, am I very social, or am I a little more introverted? And, you know, it's trying to figure out what's your thing.
Yeah. And the tricky thing with that, I'll say as a warning, is if you're trying different things out, like Bethany said, first figure out, like, what do you love doing? What gives you energy? What brings you joy? What gives you momentum? Think of those things. Take a thinking time, set a thinking time aside. You should be doing a thinking time at least once a week. Set a thinking time aside to be like, who am I? Like, what is my motivation? What brings me joy? What gives me energy? That's what you're going to need to do to get business, because you have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. It gets boring. So it better be something you enjoy, that you're good at, that brings you energy and momentum, because you've got to keep doing it. Being consistent is the key. So if you actually take the time to really think that through, to do something really intentional and purposeful when you decide what you're going to do to try to get new business. And it shouldn't just be one thing, you should be doing 2 or 3. But when you decide what those things are, then you got to stick with them. You got to do them for several months, for a full year. You're not necessarily going to see immediate results, but it's that hockey stick thing. You just keep plugging away. You just keep doing it. Success is boring, you guys. Like the repetitive nature of some of this stuff gets really boring. So find something you like to do. And then all of a sudden, people out of nowhere, just when you think, oh my God, it's not getting me anywhere, I'm not seeing any results, that's when you got to focus on those little victories. Think about the things you're learning as you go. Keep plugging away. But take the time to really think about what's going to be a best fit for you, instead of just like throwing spaghetti on the wall, right? Like, I sent a postcard last month, and then this month I went on a Facebook Zoom group thing and talked to somebody and kind of met somebody, but then I didn't follow up with them. And then I went to an open house and did that, but it didn't, I only got one person, so I'm not going to do those anymore. And like, it's really easy to feel like you should get immediate response from things, because some people do, right? Like Jackie had that open house, that lady came, she wrote a freaking offer, and then she got a listing right away, and that was bananas. Like, that doesn't always happen, but it could. It's kind of motivating to think it could maybe someday happen. But in the meantime, if that's the thing that works for you, like, just keep plugging away. You're going to build some momentum. Somebody's going to pop up out of nowhere that you kept in touch with, you set on an MLS, email updates, or you gave them your Keller Williams app and you remember to keep in touch. And then one day, 4 months later, they're like, hey, we're ready to buy a house now. And by the way, we also have a house to sell. Oh my gosh, awesome. That's amazing. You just had to keep plugging away at it. So yeah, so identify like 2 or 3 things that are things that you find enjoyable, that give you energy, that bring you joy, that help you keep that momentum, and do those things. I mean, for me, I don't make cold calls. I hate them. It's not something I've ever wanted to do, and I'm not going to. At some point, might I have somebody on my team who does that? Maybe, who knows? Big vision, could be. But for me, that's not something I'm going to do, because it's just going to kill my energy. So I do open houses, and I connect with people on social media, and I go to events when we're having them again. You know, I connect with past clients. I do whatever I can to build my momentum and energy, and also give back and put energy out there into the universe, and it comes back around. So that's where I focus my energy. I have a schedule. Every week I need to write notes to these people. I need to connect with this person. It's their 1 week anniversary. It's their 2 month anniversary since they bought their house. It's, you know, I haven't talked to this person in a while. If you don't have past clients, it can be other people that you've connected with through open houses, through relationships you have, whatever it is. So whatever you're doing, make sure it's something you like to do. Make sure you're doing it consistently. And when you're looking at your goals, make sure you're building that backwards. Okay, if this is my goal for transactions for the year, or if this is my goal for a number of new contacts for the year, how can I build that backwards to what I should be doing this month, this week, today, right now? That little bitty domino that knocks over the bigger dominoes. Right? By the 18th domino, you're knocking over the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That's real life. So it's worth doing, right? But it takes time to really sit down and uninterrupted think about it, make a plan, build it out, and then remind yourself regularly, this is what I'm working towards. This is what I should be doing. Am I using my time wisely? You're going to fall off course. I fall off course all the time. At least one day a week. I'm like, well, that was, didn't do anything today. That's okay. Get back on the horse, refocus. The more structure you give yourself, the easier it is to get back in the swing. So use those systems in a way that works for you. And I'll talk more about that stuff from the one thing, the 411, the GPS. We'll get more into that as we go. But I think this time of the year is a really great time to kind of practice that a bit, because it's not as overwhelming as planning a whole year, right? You've got 4 months to plan out. So let's do this as a trial run. Approaching things with curiosity is a really great thing to do, especially when you're new, but really anytime. So instead of saying like, I can't screw this up, this is my chance, if I don't make it in real estate by the end of 2020, it's over. Like, look at it from the perspective of curiosity. Like, oh, it would be really cool to see how many people I could help by the end of this year. For me this year, it would be really cool to see how high I can get my average sale price, because that's been a challenge for me for years. It would be so cool to see if I could do an awesome job taking care of fewer people, but increasing my average sale price, therefore increasing my GCI, therefore increasing the amount of money I can donate to my community. That's my big why. So I'm approaching it from curiosity. That didn't work. Well, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. What did I learn from this? How can I adjust moving forward? What could I tweak a little bit? Or am I just tired, bored, kind of sick of doing the same thing over and over again, and I just need to suck it up and keep going because I really haven't committed to this long enough? So The more you talk to successful people and dig into what they did to get there, the more you realize this is the stuff everybody's doing. It's repetitive, it's intentional, it requires a lot of planning, it requires setting goals and really working towards them. People aren't accidentally building these big businesses or living these big lives. It's pretty rare anyway, unless you're like born into a whole bunch of money. But even then, like, it's easy to lose it too if you don't figure out how to handle it. So don't compare yourself, but if you're curious about how people are getting there, you know, ask people questions. You know, Katie Falk, how'd you get to where you got to? You know, these coffee with a capper, go back and watch those videos. Everybody's talking about similar things. I kind of navigated through, but then I stuck with it. I, made these my goals. I was really intentional about these activities. I, had a big aha in my life, and I had to shift my priorities. I had to shift what those big rocks were. I got to the end of the year and I needed to regroup and make a new plan for next year. But take the time to really be thoughtful about that stuff. You're going to save yourself a lot of heartache by just taking a little thinking time to really focus on, what are my goals going to be, or how am I making progress on this? What's becoming a pain point for me? Is there something I can do to address that? It's definitely worth taking the time to figure that out. And it can feel a little overwhelming when you're new. Like, what do I even focus on? Well, just start really simple. What are you trying to accomplish this year? Who do you want to be by the end of this year? Or who do you have to be to accomplish what you want to by the end of this year? Who do you have to be to get to where you want to be? Big vision. Okay, well, how do I get there?
I think sometimes some of it is just stepping away from your anxiety of it, that holds you back. Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't know everything, or, what if I do meet somebody at an open house and I feel like I'm not qualified because I don't have the experience to list their house and help them buy a house. Like you start to, I mean, that's me. I'll be all gung ho and go. And it's like, oh my God, they want me to do what? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it can be, you overthink it and then you let your anxiety take over. So that's part of the challenge as well.
It is. And you have to know that everybody has a varied background in whatever they're doing. The best gift you can give yourself to quiet that voice is when you have free time, which you do when you're new, take the time to carefully practice writing an offer. Take the time to carefully review the listing contract. Take the time to talk to an agent who is, does a ton of listings and find out how they approach it. Take the time to shadow somebody. Take the time to put together your listing presentation so you really know what you're doing. Focus on something you're uncomfortable with and figure out how to get the information to feel like you have a good grasp. We don't all know everything, but the things you don't necessarily have from experience yet, you can gain through somebody who's done it, right? You don't have to experience or make a mistake or fumble through something to learn about it. You can talk to somebody who already did. And we've got like 200 freaking agents in our office, and everybody's more than happy to answer questions and talk about how they do things. So take advantage of that, schedule a phone call or see if you can shadow somebody in the office, where you can do it at a safe distance, but kind of listen to how they do phone calls or whatever it is. If your big goal is to feel more comfortable with listings, then let's break that down into smaller chunks. That means you need to really understand the listing contract. It means you really need to understand from accepted offer to closing from the seller's perspective. It means you need to have some systems in place to make sure you're really serving your client, preparing them, setting their expectations. I got to get my listing presentation together. So that's where that top 5 comes from, is we want those things to be your pillars, your roots that you can grow confidently from. So it's really worth doing that stuff, even though it seems like boring homework and it doesn't have anything directly to do with getting new business. You've got to be able to follow through once you get a person. So it's worth setting some goals for that kind of stuff too, because you will be a much better for your client, and therefore they're going to be happy. They're going to tell their friends. they're going to come back to you when they need you again. That is prospecting. It all leads back to that. So it's worth taking the time to figure that stuff out. And when it comes to just feeling like you're not worthy, or, oh God, I'm going to screw this up, just kick that little voice to the curb. Like, there's no time for that. You've got other stuff to do. So just focus on your goals, focus on the things that you're good at, what brings you joy and momentum, what can you do today, something small to make that progress towards that goal, which is leading you to that bigger vision. That's what it all comes back to. So if it's something really, really basic, but super important, like understanding the offer contract, do it. Because if you can't fill that out properly, or you can't get your client navigated through that transaction, it's kind of a bummer situation, right? Like, we're all here for you as resources, and you have the helpline. But if you can set some of those things in advance while you have time, that's really important. You're going to learn things along the way. You will. But as much as you cannot practice on your clients, that is so much better for everybody. So you're not going to like get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm perfect now and I know everything and now I can take on clients, but give yourself a good base, and that'll help shush that voice a little bit.
I think the other thing too is embracing the leverage that is available, you know.
Yes.
With the transaction coordinator, like, I made sure that I got set up, I got Renee all my stuff, so when a deal did come in, it was, the groundwork was laid out, ready to go. So I wasn't panicking at the last minute being like, oh my gosh, now I need a transaction coordinator. It was already done.
Yeah. And it's super nice that you can hire them on a transaction basis, so that if you're like, oh, I really would like to learn these things and I'd like to do more of this myself, but it's so much, and I like happen to get this client right away, and it's most important that they are well served. What can I do? That's perfect. You can hire them for one transaction. It's a reasonable cost. And then you can learn through how Renee does things. You know, like I said, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Learn from the people who've been there. Learn from the people who know what they're doing. Ask questions, use those tools and resources like Renee, like all of the videos we have, like all the people in the office. You're not alone. Nobody succeeds alone. I have not succeeded alone. I've leaned on a lot of people. I've asked lots of questions. I've had lunches and coffees and phone conversations with other people who have found great success in this business and in other businesses. And it is okay, and it's highly encouraged that you do that. So if that's one of your goals, is to kind of figure out how you're going to do whatever it is, then a piece of that should be that you're reaching out to somebody that you think does it well. It's amazing how open people are to sharing in this company. Take advantage of that.
Yeah, everyone's been very great.
Yeah, it's like shocking. Like when I got here, I was like, what kind of wonderland? What do you want? This is all about profit share, isn't it? No, it's just about like everybody doing a great job, because we all do better if everyone else is doing better. You know, all ships rise with high tides, speed of the leader, speed of the pack, all that stuff is true. The more people are doing well, the more momentum each of us have individually, the more momentum we have as a team, as a company, and that's just great for everybody.
Yep.
Awesome. So you're gonna take some thinking time this week, work on your vision, work on your goals, maybe set some really specific things you're gonna do in the next week. Yes.
I feel like I'm going to make a vision board. I need that creative thing.
Yeah, it's nice. I have a hard time with stuff like this. Like I have a hard time like justifying it because it feels indulgent, but it's not. It's a really important part of getting to my goals. And it's a great like different part of your brain activity. Especially if we're going to have a few rainy days. It's an awesome idea. Like get out some poster board and markers and some magazines and just like give yourself some kind of white space, some open time to just sort of think about, what are you trying to get towards, and you could do it for the rest of the year. You could do it for your big vision. You could think about next year, and that way what you do the rest of the year is working towards next year, because that momentum and all the activities you're doing now are going to pay off, 2 months plus from now. It's a great idea.
Is that what's behind you, a vision board?
Yes.
Can you, without getting into too much detail, describe it?
So at the top it says confidence, because I have imposter syndrome that I'm working on.
Nah.
All of us do. It doesn't matter how much business you do.
You gotta fake it to make it sometimes.
Yeah, you do. It also says own time daily. So one of my big things this year was setting some habits of morning routine, workday startup, workday shutdown, evening routine, so that I'm really intentionally using my time. Giving thanks and celebrating, which I'm not always the best at. So remembering, that's why it's part of my weekly meeting with Liz, and accountability is what are my victories. Love what I do. Smart solutions. So schedule, setting up better systems, being really intentional with my time. Help behind the scenes. That was hiring Liz full-time instead of part-time, and also adding to our team. Time to reboot. Crashing is not an option. I didn't do such a great job of that this year, but I've got 4 more months to figure it out. 14 million and 60 homes, which I think will very likely do this year, which seemed impossible at the time. And I even shrunk my goals back once COVID happened, and then I moved them forward again. Grow, which is the most important thing. It's like the base of my whole thing. Carve your own path, connect, network, doing things right, delightful, quality, hospitality, next level warmth, creating the ultimate experience. That's really my biggest thing for my clients. So it was a little bit of like business inspiration, some things about my mindset, some bits about my systems, numbers. So I had something measurable that I could be checking back and building backwards from. Other people did these and they had things like a car they wanted to buy, or stuff like that can be more like visual inspiration for people. If I had had a bigger poster board, I probably would have like put a condo on there with a balcony. So it should just be something fun to look at and like catch bits of. And that's why it's here in my office where I can see it every day.
Yeah.
But then my actual goals I have in a chart on my phone, and I look at those at least once a week, and oftentimes daily. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Whatever I'm doing right now, is that getting me to what I should be doing? Is it getting me to my goals? Is what I'm doing right now intentional and purposeful towards my goals, or is it low-hanging fruit? Is it something distracting? Is it just an endorphin hit from social media? Like, is there a reason why I'm on here?
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Yeah, and we've oftentimes done those every year as like a workshop. I don't know if we'll be able to do with gathering restrictions, but it could be something worth planning for on your own, or with with somebody else outside in a safe space or something like that. Not a bad idea. Well, I hope this was inspiring. I feel like it's very overwhelming to try to set goals and to try to figure out what you should be doing. At the end of the day, it matters what's most important to you. Really identify your why, think about that big vision, and that's going to help you kind of pull those bigger rocks, pull those activities, pull those things you should be doing weekly and daily from it. And hopefully that freedom to think big will kind of help you work on those smaller pieces without feeling overwhelmed.
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. You all have a wonderful week. Remember, I'm here for accountability calls. Just text me to set up a time. I hope this is motivating for you. And if you do need more momentum, I highly recommend those podcasts as a good thing to go to, or come back and watch this video again. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.